They told you influence meant domination. That to lead, you must rise above others. That to win, you must outtalk, outshine, outlast. But those who truly understand human nature, the Lincolns, the Frederick Douglass, the ones who moved nations and rewired hearts, they knew the truth that most miss. You do not win hearts by overpowering them. You win hearts by understanding them. You win hearts silently. In a world obsessed with being heard, dare to be the one who hears. While others fight to speak first, be the one who listens last. Because that's where the real magic lives. Not in what you say, but in what you allow others to feel in your presence. Let me tell you something most people will never understand: being deeply heard is more valuable than being brilliantly spoken to. That's why Dale Carnegie didn't teach how to talk your way into influence, he taught how to carry your way there. Not with performance, but with presence. Not with manipulation, but with genuine interest, so rare, it stuns people silent when they feel it. People don't remember the clever thing you said. They remember how safe they felt saying things they never told anyone else. They remember your stillness, your patience, your steady eyes that didn't flinch when they opened up. That is how you win a heart, without making a sound. And yet, the world races in the opposite direction. We scream for attention, plead for approval, perform like actors on an invisible stage. But here's the tragedy. You can win applause without ever winning a heart. You can trend without ever being trusted. And trust, real trust, cannot be bought, forced, or demanded. It is earned. In silence. In those invisible moments where someone thinks, I matter here. I'm not just being heard, I'm being understood. If you want influence that outlives you, you must first kill the need to be impressive. And awaken the desire to be impactful. Because people are not drawn to greatness. They are drawn to those who see greatness in them. You want to lead? Stop trying to be followed. Start making people feel worth following. Carnegie knew this. He studied it. He lived it. And he gave the world a blueprint, not for power, but for presence. Not for control, but for connection. He reminded us, you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. That is not a quote. That is a mirror. And if you're brave enough to look in it, you will find the real reason you haven't been winning people. It's not your skills. It's not your words. It's your intention. Are you trying to be admired? Or are you trying to understand? Are you chasing validation? Or creating safety? Because when your presence stops being about you, that's when you become unforgettable. That's when people open up. That's when doors swing wide. That's when hearts, guarded for years, begin to soften, because they finally feel safe. Not because you're flashy, but because you're still. Not because you had the perfect line, but because you had the patience to let someone else finish theirs. That's what wins hearts. And when you win hearts, you don't need to demand loyalty. It's given. Freely. Fully. Forever. So if the world tells you to speak louder, choose to listen deeper. If the world tells you to fight harder, choose to understand better. Because you're not here to impress the crowd. You're here to impact souls. And sometimes, the most powerful voice in the room is the one that doesn't speak. It simply makes everyone else feel heard. And in that silence, you're not empty. You're anchored. You're not weak. You're wise. Because you've learned what most never do, that connection isn't forged through dominance, but through presence. Through patience. Through a quiet kind of strength that doesn't need the spotlight to shine. You don't need to prove you're right. You'd rather protect the relationship. You don't interrupt to be understood. You pause to understand. Because your goal isn't to win arguments, it's to win people. The world might chase noise, but you build peace. In every room you enter, you leave calm where there was chaos, clarity where there was confusion. And hearts remember that. Not always immediately, but permanently. You're not trying to be unforgettable through force. You become unforgettable through grace. Through how deeply you see people. How gently you respond when you could react. How you lift others up when you could step over them to rise. That's why you're different. That's why you're magnetic. Because in a world obsessed with being seen, you've mastered the art of seeing others. And in doing so, you teach something rare, that leadership isn't loud, real power isn't forceful, and love, in its most transformative form, doesn't need to shout. It just shows up. Quietly. Consistently. And it changes everything, because in that quiet presence, you're not just heard, you're felt. People don't just listen to your words, they absorb your energy. They trust it. They lean into it. They remember it when the noise fades. You've become the calm in their storm. Not because you demanded their attention, but because you gave them yours. You've learned the rarest skill of all, to listen not just with ears, but with empathy. To speak not to impress, but to uplift. To carry influence without needing to carry ego. And that is the kind of presence this world is starving for. Because let's face it, anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can shout over silence. Anyone can demand respect. But it takes someone rare to earn it quietly. It takes self-control to be still when your emotions beg you to react. It takes strength to stay soft in a world that's hardened by pride. It takes real courage to say, I don't need to win here, I need to connect. That's where you rise above. You don't overpower people. You empower them. You don't enter a room to take up space. You enter to hold it, for others. To create a sanctuary in the chaos. To be the one who sees when others feel invisible. That's why your leadership feels different. Because it's not just strategic, it's soulful. Not built on fear, but fueled by faith. Not centered around control, but around care. You walk through life not proving your worth, but proving your willingness, to understand, to elevate, to serve. And that's the kind of influence that echoes. Not just for a moment. For a lifetime. People may forget what was said in the room. But they'll never forget how they felt in your presence. You've tapped into something deeper than charisma, you've tapped into character. Because charisma may open doors, but character is what keeps them open. And when the world finally pauses, when the noise wears them down, when the applause grows faint, when they're tired of being impressed but not impacted, they will come looking for you. Not because you shouted to be seen, but because you saw them. Not because you stood out, but because you stood with. This is how hearts are won, silently. Not with performance, but with presence. Not through power plays, but through purposeful peace. And those who lead like this? They don't just change rooms. They change people. And people change the world. But here's what they don't tell you. The most powerful leaders don't leave trails of applause behind them, they leave trails of healing. They walk into broken rooms and restore dignity. They speak to the pain no one has words for. They look into tired eyes and say without saying, you matter. I see you. That kind of presence? It doesn't come from training alone. It's forged in the quiet fires of failure, in the lonely spaces where ego dies and empathy is born. Because before you can calm someone else's storm, you must learn to sit with your own. Before you can hold space for another soul, you must first stop running from yours. And when you do, when you finally choose presence over performance, compassion over competition, grace over grandstanding, you unlock something sacred. You begin to lead without a title, serve without needing praise, and love without keeping score. And that kind of living, that kind of leading, is the rarest form of influence. Not the kind that trends. The kind that transforms. Because the world isn't moved by those who shout the loudest. It's moved by those who live the deepest. You don't need to outshine anyone. You only need to outcare them. You don't need to be louder to be heard. You need to be truer to be remembered. People crave authenticity more than authority. They follow not because they're told to, but because they feel led, by someone real. Someone who doesn't just talk about values, but becomes them. And when you choose that path, the quiet, unwavering, soul-led path, you become something more than a leader. You become a mirror that reflects the best in others. A light that reminds people of who they are beneath the noise. A compass in a culture that's lost its direction. You don't dominate. You dignify. You don't impress. You ignite. You don't control. You connect. And somewhere, long after the applause fades and the lights go out, someone will sit in silence and whisper your name with gratitude. Not because you told them what to do, but because you reminded them who they are. That is legacy. That is leadership. That is love in action. And that's how hearts are won, silently.